What if the world's most iconic car started as a noisy, bare-bones Beetle in 1938, and by 2045 became a fully electric machine that updates itself while you sleep? From war-torn factories to AI-powered driving, this is how Volkswagen transformed the way the world moves. And the craziest part? It's still the people's car. Blueprints and beginnings, 1938 to 1945. In 1938, a new factory rose out of fields near a small settlement, then called Fallersleben. The regime that commissioned it would collapse within 7 years, but the idea it set in motion, an affordable, durable, people's car, would outlive the politics that birthed it. The cornerstone of the plant was laid on May 26, 1938, inaugurating an industrial city that would later be renamed Wolfsburg. The car itself, what the world would come to call the Beetle, existed in prototypes before the war, but mass production would have to wait for peace. Defeat brought an unexpected guardian. In 1945, under British military control, Major Ivan Hurst looked at the bombed-out factory and saw not rubble but potential. He organized parts, relit production lines, and began building the simple, air-cooled cars that Germany needed and that a weary continent could afford. The mechanics were basic, the engineering ingenious. A rear-engine layout, a tough flat four, and a body whose shape would become a silhouette recognized anywhere on Earth. Before long, the plant had orders, the workforce had dignity, and a devastated region had an economic heartbeat again. From recovery to recognition, 1945 to 1955. By the early 1950s, the Beetle was no longer a local solution. It was an export, a manifesto on wheels. The millionth Beetle rolled out in 1955, glittering with celebratory trimmings as if to punctuate the impossible. The people's car had become the planet's car. Around it, Wolfsburg grew into a company town with its own rhythms and rituals. The shift whistles, the trains of workers, the hum of a factory that seemed to never sleep. Advertising that changed everything. 1959 to 1960s. Culture caught up with the car in a chorus of small, subversive headlines. In America, a new advertising agency broke all the rules with 2 words: think small. The ad's white space was an act of rebellion, its humility, a wink in an age of chrome excess. The Beetle's honesty, its refusal to pretend, became its superpower. The follow-up Lemon ad, a joke about a rejected car, turned quality control into cool. Volkswagen wasn't just selling transportation, it was selling a way to see the world with irony, with restraint, with a smile. The counterculture embraced the bug because it felt human. Expanding the family, 1950 to 1972. Success built pressure. A one-car company is a cliff you eventually reach. So Volkswagen started sketching a bigger canvas. The Type 2 transporter, what surfers and students would simply call the bus, arrived in 1950. It was labor van and living room, road trip icon, and rolling protest billboard. If the bug said, "I'm different," the bus said, "We're in this together." Almost by accident, Volkswagen had become the official vehicle of community. Milestones followed, like mile markers. On February 17, 1972, Beetle number 15,007,034 rolled off the line, surpassing the Ford Model T as the most produced car ever. The little car that once seemed an anachronism now wore a crown. But the world was changing. Front-wheel drive was the future. Water-cooled engines were the future. Hatchbacks were the future. To survive, Volkswagen had to lead. The front drive revolution, 1973 to 1979. The reinvention came swiftly and decisively. In 1973, Passat arrived. A modern, water-cooled family car, signaling a clean break from the air-cooled past. In 1974, the Golf detonated the hatchback segment. Giugiaro lines, tight packaging, front-drive precision. It wasn't just a replacement for the Beetle. It was a new archetype. The same year, Sirocco gave the formula a coupe silhouette. And in 1975, the Polo extended the logic to the small car class. By the end of the decade, German Beetle production would cease. The torch had been passed. The brand that once lived on one shape now thrived on a platform of ideas. From brand to group, 1964 to 1990s. Group strategy widened the lens. In 1964, Volkswagen acquired Auto Union, the seat of Audi, and with it, a second center of gravity and a culture of engineering experimentation. In 1986, Seat joined the family. In 1991, Skoda. Through the 1990s, the constellation expanded again. Bentley, Bugatti, Lamborghini, names that seemed galaxies away from people's car, now orbiting the same group sun. The logic wasn't just scale, it was synergy. Platforms could be shared. Components could be harmonized. Luxury could subsidize volume. Volume could stabilize luxury. Within 1 decade, Volkswagen turned itself into an ecosystem. The China expansion, 1984 to 2000s. Then came China, a market that would rewrite the math of the industry. In 1984, Volkswagen established its first joint venture in Shanghai, what's now SAC Volkswagen. In 1991, FAW Volkswagen followed in Changchun. The Santana taxis that filled Shanghai's streets in the 1990s were more than cars. They were the vocabulary of a nation on the move. For a generation of Chinese drivers, Volkswagen meant the first commute, the first road trip, the first sense that the horizon could be chased on four wheels. Nostalgia. Reimagined. 1998 to 2000s. The 1998 new Beetle tapped a different energy. Nostalgia. Its smile returned, rounded and friendly, now on a modern platform. The car was a love letter to the memory of a shape, and a savvy way to remind the public that the brand's heart still beat beneath the skin of Passats and Golfs. In showrooms, the car felt like déjà vu. On the road, it felt like a reunion. The past hadn't returned, it had been redesigned. Ambition and range, 2000 to 2014. In the 2000s, ambition went vertical, sometimes literally. The Phaeton attempted to make Volkswagen a true luxury nameplate in its own right, built in a transparent factory in Dresden that looked more like a museum than a plant. It was audacious and commercially uneven. But the point wasn't only sales. It was to prove a capability, to stretch a brand's comfort zone, to show that the badge could build a limousine as obsessively as it built a hatchback. Meanwhile, Golf GTI kept the flame of everyday performance. Each generation a lesson in how to combine practicality with personality. The brand had range, and it meant to use it. Dieselgate and Reckoning, 2015 to 2016. And then, in 2015, the storm. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued a notice of violation. Diesel engines fitted with software that cheated emissions tests. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a crisis of trust. The settlements would be among the largest in automotive history. A new name, Electrify America, entered the lexicon as part of the remedy to accelerate a charging network in the United States. The brand that had sold the world on clean diesel would now have to rebuild, publicly and painstakingly. The electric pivot, 2019 to 2020s. Out of that reckoning came a pivot so sharp it redrew the company's DNA. Volkswagen didn't just plan EVs. It designed an electric architecture, the MEB platform, specifically for them. In 2019, ID.3 debuted as a compact, all-electric heir to the Golf's democratic mission, and in 2020, ID.4 carried the idea global as a crossover, the new default silhouette of the age. Zwickau, once an internal combustion plant, became a dedicated EV hub. The strategy wasn't boutique. It was mass-market electrification engineered to be affordable, scalable, and repeatable. Heritage meets high voltage, 2022 to 2024. The past returned again, this time with a plug and a wink, the ID. Buzz reimagined the beloved bus as a battery electric family icon. Cheerful, practical, and unmistakably Volkswagen. Meanwhile, the ID.7 moved the brand upmarket in aerodynamics and software, proof that efficiency and elegance could coexist. What once was heritage is now a product roadmap. The shapes that made people smile now house technologies that make the planet breathe easier. Software, and the Trinity Vision, 2020s, early 2030. Inside the company, the age of code arrived with a vengeance. Software became the nervous system of the car and the bottleneck. Cariad, a group software unit, set out to build a unified stack for everything from infotainment to driver assistance. Progress proved uneven, schedules slipped, and leadership changed. The ambitious Trinity program, meant to inaugurate the next-gen SSP electric platform with advanced software and high automation, was delayed into the early 2030s. In response, Volkswagen adjusted, improved today's cars on today's platforms, and staged the leap when the software is truly ready. Partnerships for speed, 2024 to 2025. Even in turbulence, the brand kept experimenting with partnerships to speed up its climb along the digital curve. A race that, in the modern auto industry, is as decisive as the horsepower wars of the past. Volkswagen understood that in the era of software-defined vehicles, delays in code can derail entire model launches. That's why in 2024, the company made headlines with a high-profile software tie-up with Rivian, an American EV startup known for agile development and advanced over-the-air update capabilities. The move wasn't just about adopting new tech, it was about adopting a new mindset, learning quickly, sharing code libraries, and co-developing systems that could shrink development timelines. This partnership joined a growing list of targeted investments and joint ventures aimed at strengthening Volkswagen's digital infrastructure. From in-car user interfaces to battery management software, the goal was the same: turn software from a bottleneck into a competitive advantage. The point wasn't to collect an impressive roster of tech partners for the press release. It was to accelerate the delivery of better, more connected, and more reliable vehicles to customers. In a market where software can define the entire driving experience, Volkswagen was signaling that it intended to be among the fastest learners. China and the EV race, 2020s to 2030. Meanwhile, the old workhorse kept reinventing itself on new fuel. Golf remained a pillar, ID models multiplied, and regional strategies evolved. In China, the group's largest market, Volkswagen expanded its joint venture footprint and began pivoting that ecosystem toward electrified lineups. The company's presence there, stretching back to the 1980s, gave it factories, suppliers, and a deep bench of local know-how. The EV revolution demanded it also find agility against new native competitors. The race in China is the race for the future, and Volkswagen is running it at full stride.
The constant idea, 1938 to present. Look closely and you can see a pattern that's been there since Wolfsburg's first whistle. Volkswagen moves the center closer to where people are. In the 1950s, that meant building simple cars that could be repaired with simple tools. In the 1960s, it meant selling humility in a loud market. In the 1970s, it meant choosing front-drive logic over rear-engine romance. In the 1980s and 1990s, it meant building a group, a platform economy, a global reach. In the 2000s, it meant sampling the top shelf and learning what belonged on it. In the 2010s, it meant confronting failure in public and rewriting the plan. In the 2020s, it means electric for the many, not the few.
The road ahead, 2025 to 2045. If the arc from 1938 to now is the story of reinvention under pressure, the chapter from now to 2045 is about scale without sacrifice. The brand has pledged aggressive electrification in Europe, targeting a BEV-only lineup for the Volkswagen passenger car brand there by around 2033 and significant BEV mix gains in other regions. The group's Way to Zero framework points toward climate neutrality by mid-century, but the milestones are nearer. Platforms that cut cost and weight, batteries that store more and charge faster, factories that recycle more and waste less. The SSP platform, delayed but not abandoned, aims to condense the group's architectures into one highly scalable backbone for everything from city cars to flagships. Plans are already visible in the metal and the roadmaps. ID. Models will continue proliferating, including truly affordable EVs positioned to make electric the default choice. Wolfsburg is being retooled for the EV era, with new capacity earmarked for high-volume electric compacts. The company will keep iterating on its current MEB-based lineup, improving range, efficiency, and user experience, while staging the step to SSP when the software and the cost curve match the ambition. By 2045, if these bets pay off, people's car might mean something broader than a single model or even a single brand. It might mean a network of vehicles that share a common brain and speak a common language, updated overnight and understood instantly by the people who use them. It might mean cars that are designed to be recycled as thoughtfully as they're designed to be driven. It might mean a Volkswagen that feels familiar when you slide behind the wheel and feels new every time you press the start button, if there is one. And if you want to glimpse that future, you don't have to imagine flying pods or vaporware prototypes. Look at the arc already drawn. A factory's cornerstone in 1938, a British major's stubborn gamble in 1945, a million cars by 1955, a record-breaking beetle in 1972, a front-drive revolution mid-70s, a global group by the 90s, a fall in 2015, a pivot in 2019, an electric family taking shape in the 2000s and 20s. This is how a brand learns to be both steady and surprising. So where does the road go from here? Volkswagen's near-term map is clear. Grow ID. Into a full family. Keep lowering EV costs. Accelerate software maturity. Launch the SSP era toward the late 2020s. And make Europe an all-electric stronghold by the early 2030s. The longer-term vision is bolder. A carbon-neutral company by mid-century, software-defined cars that get better for a decade or more, an electric model so compelling that the choice feels less like a sacrifice and more like a celebration. In other words, the plan is to make the future feel as approachable as a Beetle once did, as communal as a bus once did, and as everyday essential as a Golf still does, only cleaner, smarter, and ready for the next 100 years. If the question at the start was whether a car can reinvent itself across eras, Volkswagen's answer is a work in progress, written in steel and software, in factories and families, in famous advertisements, and anonymous commutes. From Wolfsburg in 1938 to a decarbonized lineup in 2045, the same idea keeps resurfacing. Mobility for millions, upgraded for the moment. The people's car, still learning what the people need.